today, so I'm really shaky and a little freaked out.
Are you fasting?
No. Should I? No,
Well,
not fasting. So we're going to start with a poem that I recently wrote when I went home for Thanksgiving. I went to Michigan and I had a 2-hour layover in Detroit where I proceeded to get drunk. And this is what I wrote. Things to do in the Detroit airport. Sit at the airport bar, mulling over how if you rented a car, you could be there by now. Order beers, beer upon beer, pretend to know what's going on in the game, who won Monday night football, who's playing this weekend, what hunting season it is. Listen for the bartender's name. She will like you more if you address her. Shave the icing off the glass, make circle prints on the bar, carving out the person who sat here before you. Wonder about the guy next to you. Look for a ring. Imagine him without a ring, pressing you up in bathroom stalls, missing your flights and staying overnight, never getting his name. Make more circles. Wonder about the 3 men talking. Wonder about the man who orders an Amstel Light and pulls cash from his wallet. Order another beer. Contemplate whiskey neat in a glass. Listen for the accent. Acclimate to the accent. Remember where you came from. Hum to the song on the radio, even though it's been 10 years since it came out. They still think it's cool. No country songs. Order appetizers, 2 or 3, anything fried. Make small conversations with the bartender about the grown man with the Velcro wallet. Ask her if she's ever known a grown man who still carries a Velcro wallet. Analyze the sound of Velcro. Wonder how silent Velcro hasn't been invented yet. Remember the year. Remember the utility. Check the airport monitors, looking for other flights to warmer cities, wondering if you still feel the chill. Order another beer. Check your phone for a message you haven't received. Pretend to read one anyway. To be engaged in something that isn't there, just to look the part, to play the part. Respond on your notepad. Check his posts. Check her posts. Nothing's changed. Remember why you're here and why you left. Even though you don't associate with Detroit, it is a part of you. It's embedded in your answer to where you come from. People assume. Sometimes you correct them, unless they're smug, like the city smog from cars. Remember, you don't come from here, but it's in you. In your name, in the GAN of the state, you are here. People think you know Eminem, you were a witness of yesterday's shooting, you know the unemployment percentage, but you don't. You reign from a further land, the second part of the state. The part of the state that some say should just float away and be a part of Canada. They don't understand. They don't know of the lives that were born there and of the good of the people that come out of there. Go under the tunnel from Concourse C to Concourse A and back again. Listen to Sigur Rós and respond to the lighting. Wish you were on ecstasy. Feel like you are. Tap into that emotion that is created by it and float. On conveyor belts, stand on the walk side just to confuse yourself and others. Be a hypocrite. Watch the fountain like dolphins from distant lands. People with their camera phones recording, flying squirrels. Once, then twice, then stops and starts again. Remember the time you sat on an island and watched fountains. Remember the ferry rides. Stand in the line of Einstein Bagel because it's worth it. Justify ordering McDonald's. Wondering about the person running, they are acting too. Will they make it feel awkward when you see someone who was on your flight? Someone you spent 3 hours with, never saw or talked to. Think about public transportation. How you sit next to the man with the book every time so you can be 2 strangers reading. Allowing limbs to drift into seats, the brush of a leg, a reminder you still exist. Kind of for the ladies, I gotta say. You guys, you might relate to it. It's about a bad date. You know, when you go on those blind dates, which we all have been subjected to.
And only women have bad dates.
That's not true, actually. But so this was a date I went on. Terrible date. I got home and wrote this poem. Because I mean, at least a poem came out of it, right? Aftermath. And so what if I shared all my secrets with a man I barely know? On a first date, under the bar lights, under the lights of a future I thought I could have, with this man I barely know. It's a time or two similar to these where we regret to have finally opened up, to have bared our chest on the countertops when it would have been an easier task and much more rewarding had I unbuttoned my blouse to a man I do know. And I tried to know, but couldn't quite crack through the surface, nor allow the foam to settle back before taking it all in one gulp. And so what if I was emotionally slutty, in front of this man I barely know, and dug deep inside myself to pull out only the good qualities that I possess, and dangle them in front of him, like car keys to a child? I may have supported Ted Bundy's motives because he did. Because he defends bottom dwellers, and all that matters is whether or not there is probable cause, whether or not it's beyond a reasonable doubt, whether or not your soul comes out that day or stays tucked away still. And maybe I talked a little bit too much about humanity, about basic human rights. Sex is a basic human right, he said. I should have left then, but I laughed and said, not as easily attainable at all. Scanning the room, pointing out the misfortunes, who probably have more sex than Bukowski, who is hideous, but don't write about it or flaunt it and accept it as a daily routine, as something as necessary as breakfast or a first mug of dark roast. Maybe it was my secrets that made him stray. Unfaithful before midnight, under the bar lights, watching my future play back in films on countertops. Or it was the exposure of myself, reflecting in his, realizing I haven't stood with both feet on firm ground in quite some time. Addiction. I left the place of tyrants, took a detour past street signs and moving sidewalks, not noticing I was blocked past the street I should have went down. A man catches up to me. I didn't hear him, but felt the dragging of his feet on pavement behind me. The buds in my ears blocked out the commotion of the nightlife. His presence was on my forearm, forcing me to turn to face him. His cupped hands out in front of me, asking for change, faith, directions. He says, I just need to get a beer. I admire his honesty, but with empty pockets and a swimming liver myself, I walk along next to him. Just one beer and I'll be all right. One fucking... He collapses in the middle of the street, grabbing hold of my ankle before his face plants into the cement. And if I had a reaction to give, I would have knelt down next to him. To coat his throat with liquor, I would have given him mouth-to-mouth from a brown bottle, providing the small taste of sweetness on my lips for his last moments. I should have gathered all the sticks nearest to me and lined them up in a heart around his corpse, or grab an innocent bystander to strangle and watch the transfer of souls. But I just asked his name. Gerald, he said, what's yours? I want to take a saw to slice him in half, and have it be more symmetrical, to have it be right again, so it's not just two human beings interacting, but a simple monologue under a streetlight. Okay, so the next poem is a poem that I wrote a while ago, and it started as a very long, drawn-out, convoluted poem that was just like, what am I trying to say with this? So I looked at it and I was like, I think that what I want to say could be said in very few words. So this was my first attempt at editing my own stuff, which I'm not very good at doing, but this is what happens. Fillers. The mangled bodies of left-behind chattels. Hang them in your closet. You mustn't befriend them. They are not our end tables. They are not the liners of our shower curtains. Their bodies, expendable. Their purpose, a calculation. The silence of two strangers fucking. Okay. This one was also written at the Detroit airport, and I think maybe I should start hanging out there because it's kind of inspiring. Just airports in general, right? Because you're all just there, you have nothing else to do, you're waiting for your flights, and you're forced to coexist with these people, and so we're just observing. So this was just written about a conversation I overheard. Headlines. Oh, and my disclaimer is I'm not an actress, and so I do really poor impressions of voices. So this is supposed to sound like somebody from Detroit, but it's probably going to sound like a Western on crack. A woman at the counter expresses the news to her coworker. They gone down and tied her up, threw her in the back of the trunk, and burned her, she says. But not in shock or disbelief. This is the Detroit airport where nothing is shocking. Heard and seen it all, and if not, we're threatened to. Too far from Lake Michigan to feel the chill anymore. Why are they targeting old people? Ain't that sad? A young man older than me calls me ma'am because here is the polite thing to do. Why can't they find them boys? Where they be hiding? We all hide ourselves, tucked away inside, above the core we hover, somewhere there. The boys who tied up tortured that old woman and burned her, it's how they hide, behind the infliction of others' pain, under the closed, tight lids. Adults only show pain with their eyes. Perhaps if we were all children, we could show our pain with our bodies, our limbs kicking, bodies convulsing at the thought of the terrifying. Then we may not have to hide or bleed another's blood. Then our bandages could be removed and we could find our own outlets through our bodies and our limbs. I wasn't going to read this poem tonight, but I'm feeling the energy here. And so I'm going to do it. So if you just heard it recently, I apologize, but get into it, because it's good times. Namesake. As a scientist, you liked being able to predict the future using logic. Separating components late at night until you found the answer. So it was only natural that you went back to my childhood and started looking for warning signs after they found severed body parts in my apartment. When you asked me why I poured motor oil into the goldfish tank, I don't think I was honest with you. I should have told you I wanted to see them suffer, that I felt like I was living in a fish tank all those years being watched by you and Mom and always being told I was doing something wrong. They needed to stop moving so that I could watch them. Dad, they said you should have known. When I became fascinated with the fluidity of things and wanted to play with animal bones like fiddlesticks, sneaking roadkill into Grandma's basement to dissect the smell of death rising from beneath her floors, I killed our dog Frisky, put his head on a wooden stake, and I wanted to present him to the world, to show the beauty of something long after it's gone, to outsmart the fleeting and keep something forever, even if it was just a part of it. But how could you have known? You were just a father trying to raise his son. When you found out I stole that mannequin from the department store, piece by piece, starting with his feet, and placed his limbs in shopping bags, I don't think you understood why I did it. I sawed off Anthony's head, I opened his chest to explore his insides to find out how he worked, what made him tick. I needed to hear the sound of his pulse like an amphitheater coming up from his ribcage. I needed to hold his organs in my hands, if but just for the sense of touch. Like when you made me hold that dead goldfish in your hands. It was then I felt closer to them, when they couldn't get away from me, and I could hold them forever. The teachers told you I was shy, that I wouldn't play with the kids at recess. They were always running away from me. It was only when I convinced a girl to let me dangle a pocket watch in front of her, I found out how it worked. They wouldn't have done what I wanted if I had just asked. I had to put them under a spell, Dad, hold drills to their skulls and watch them bleed, pour hydrochloric acid into their streams, rewire their brains like zombies for them to stay with me. Place their heads in boxes and organs in freezers and keep them locked long after they were removed. And when you found that wooden box, I told you it was pornography. I lied to you. I wish you hadn't trusted me so much. Maybe then the secrets in that box could have been revealed. I could have opened the locks, the one on my mind. Father, you don't have to forgive me, but you do have to listen. This wasn't a cry for help. I just wasn't born with all my parts. Yes, you created me, but that was not an experiment of yours to make. You couldn't take the sum of all my parts and make me whole again. I'm sorry you had to watch my past unfold on TV screens and read about me in the paper. That David stripped himself like peeling tape and changed his last name from Dahmer. But when I was caught, it wasn't them I was confessing to. It was you. I was finally letting you see what was inside that wooden box all those years. Opened up myself like the victim bodies and let you see we all have an addiction, Dad, something inside us fighting to surface. But what if I could have told you I could have stopped? That the compulsion was something I could have controlled. Would that have made it better? I am your son, Dad, your flesh and blood. But haven't you ever just wanted to taste something to better understand it? Thank you. I gotta say, before I wrote that poem, I was pretty obsessed with researching Jeffrey Dahmer. And I didn't feel quite the same after that. So, it's an interesting project to do. I'll read a few more. This one is called Bartender, and it's for my bartender. And
Bar.
611. in Capitol Hill.
I thought it was a Detroit airport. I thought it was a Redwood.
You know, I have a lot of bartenders, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. They're all not here because I told them I was somewhere else. Bartender. Why do we all come here? Answers?
For the bar.
Why do we fill these seats, find comfort on this bar stool, press our lives and bet our days upon this upholstery? Do they speak of us? These countertops could speak truths we may never know. These glasses have felt breaths beyond our necks. The bartender, seemingly insignificant, but the backdrop to our existence, the only permanent fixture that moves from his post and remains the same to us. Got one more for you guys. Bass. When you played that bass, it wasn't like watching a giant picking strings to respond to the guitarist. It was you, tucked into the upper bow of the frame, bellowing with the strings being pulled apart by the tips of your fingers. It was me, leaning in the corner, beckoning attention, my call muted by the response to swing notes. When you played that bass, I watched your body intertwine in the pocket, your kneecaps cuffed by sea boughs, your hand tightly wrapped around the maple neck. I can't remember the last time you choked me in the dark, or the last times our ribs were not forced on top of each other without glue. When you played that bass, it was like you were willing the jealousy out of me, playing with my heart gut strings across the ebony bridge, creating soothing sounds. And after you played that bass at our last dinner party we'd ever organized together, we both watched you carve us out of the sunlit portrait of our one-bedroom apartment. Pack up the spilled milk on the counter, the balled-up socks on the carpet, leaving us leaning against the corner, surrounded by the remnants of you, raising our individual lines with despair that came through air vents. You took one last look of me, then at her full silhouette, and the space between us smaller and smaller, your hips to my hips one last time, your hand to her neck tighter, and with one last strum of her strings, you were gone. Thanks, guys.